The most exotic warplanes aloft these days are the mysterious stealth jets. The F-117 Black Jet is a unique night attack aircraft, unlike any single-seat fighter ever to fly. And its larger relative, the B-2 Advanced Technology Bomber, is the most advanced strategic bomber in the world today. This video ordnance program takes a look at the secret world of stealth technology to unravel its mysteries. For decades, air forces have attempted to reduce the vulnerability of their aircraft by making them less visible to the enemy. The traditional method has been camouflage painting. But since World War II, radar has gradually become the principal means of detecting aircraft. Radar can detect aircraft from hundreds of miles away, and it can be used to guide deadly anti-aircraft missiles with pinpoint precision. Stealth technology attempts to camouflage aircraft from radar, just as camouflage paint was designed to hide aircraft from enemy view. A radar works by sending out a focused beam of electromagnetic radiation. Some of the radiation reflects off the aircraft, returning to the radar antenna. This reflected energy determines what the radar can see and what it cannot see. The wizard war to blind radar began in World War II. Bombers dropped thin strips of aluminum foil called chaff. Carried by the winds, these formed huge clouds on enemy radar screens, making it impossible to determine the precise location of the attacking bombers. By the 1950s, advances in radar technology allowed radars to see through the obscuring cloud of chaff. Its place was taken by electronic jamming. Aircraft carried electronic countermeasure systems which sent out a strong signal. They blinded the radar by overwhelming the reflected radar signal with a stronger false signal. Every new technology provokes a countermeasure. By the 1970s, jamming could be circumvented by new frequency-hopping radars. A curious little missile of the 1960s suggested another approach. The Quail decoy missile emphasized that the visibility of an airplane to radar was determined as much by its shape as its size. Certain shapes, such as 90-degree corners, concentrate radar signals and reflect them strongly. The Quail exploited these features so that it would appear as large as a B-52 bomber to enemy radars. The B-52 bombers could launch several Quails on false headings, confusing the enemy about the number and location of the real bombers. If the Quail could appear larger on radar than it really was, could aircraft be configured to look smaller or even disappear? This idea led to low observability technology, popularly called stealth today. One of the first aircraft to incorporate low observability technology was the Ryan Fire-B unmanned reconnaissance drone. Surfaces which reflected radar strongly, such as the rotating blades of its jet engine, were hidden deep inside the airframe. This tiny robot spy plane also incorporated a new type of material as its skin, called RAM, or radar absorbent material. RAM soaks up radar energy like a sponge, preventing it from reflecting back to the radar. Tests found that these drones reflected radar energy so weakly that they had become virtually invisible to radar. In the 1960s, another spy plane appeared in the U.S. Air Force service, the legendary Lockheed SR-71. The SR-71 was one of the first manned aircraft to employ stealth, low observability technology. The SR-71 was not invisible to radar, but its use of radar absorbent material helped reduce its visibility. Another example of the impact of low observability technology is the B-1 bomber. The original version of the B-1, the B-1A, had a radar cross-section of 1 square meter, 10 times less than the older B-52. Due to the threat posed by new advances in radar-guided missiles, it was redesigned with additional low observable features as the improved B-1B. B-1B version had a radar cross-section of only about 1/10 of a square meter, 1/100th that of the older B-52 bomber. The improvement between the B-1A and the B-1B hinted at the potential of this new advance in the Wizard War. The question was, if low observability technology could reduce the visibility of aircraft, could it actually make them disappear? In 1978, the United States Air Force contracted the famous Skunk Works of Lockheed Aircraft to begin design of a stealth strike fighter, codenamed Senior Trend. Unlike the SR-71 or the B-1B, the Senior Trend would be designed from the ground up with low observability features. Tests had shown that by carefully shaping the contours of the fuselage, the aircraft's radar cross-section could be reduced dramatically. This resulted in the very unusual shape of the Senior Trend, later named the F-117A. The first flight of the F-117 took place in June 1981. The program was so secret that pilots recruited for the program were not told their actual assignment. It was cloaked under a fictitious program to improve the avionics on the A-7 attack aircraft.
When I entered the program, what I was told was I was going to be doing avionics testing on A-7s. And that's the premise we went in. And we were briefed on the program probably about a month or two after we started A-7 training in Tucson.
It was under the cover of A-7 avionics work, and I had maybe in the back of my mind 3 or 4 different things it could possibly be, but it wasn't until I got here they put us in a closed room and told us what the program was, and I went, oh, so this is what it is.
As unique as the F-117 appears, its novelty is only skin deep. To speed up development of this revolutionary new design, many of its internal components came from other successful aircraft programs.
The decision was made to make the airplane in minimum time with full capability that was desired at the time. In order to do that, a lot of off-the-shelf equipment had to be taken. As to the exact percentage, I couldn't comment on that, but I will give you a couple of examples. The flight control system, we said, is the F-16 flight control system. The ejection seat is the ACES-2 ejection seat, the same one that's in the F-15, F-16, A-10. The environmental control system is partially out of a C-130. The engines are GE-404 engines, same engines that are used in the F-A-18. The brake systems, original brake systems, were off a Gulfstream 3 civilian aircraft. And there were many other black box type components that were off the shelf. What that does, obviously, is it gives you a known system capability when you put it in the airplane, and it also allows these folks over here who maintain the aircraft to know exactly what they're getting into with those components. And so we were able to capitalize both on a known capability and a known reliability and maintainability side.
By 1983, the first stealth fighters were in service. Their pilots quickly dubbed them the Black Jet.
Those of us in the unit, since most of us came into the unit before we could even whisper the word stealth or F-117, have always referred to it as the Black Jet. And there is no name that has become affectionate for us to refer to the airplane.
The nickname Black Jet stems from its special black paint finish, codenamed Iron Ball. This type of paint reportedly helps diffuse radar reflections. Every tiny detail of the F-117 has been carefully thought through to minimize radar reflection. Engine fan blades are one of the worst offenders, so the stealth fighter's engines are buried deep in the fuselage. Its air intakes are covered by a special grille that minimizes the reflection of radar energy. Another common source of strong radar reflections is the cockpit. On ordinary aircraft, the radar travels through the plexiglass canopy and reflects off the many objects inside the cockpit. On the F-117, the canopy is coated with a special metallic material to prevent the radar energy entering the cockpit. Another source of strong radar reflection is the wing-mounted missile pylon. So on the stealth fighter, the missiles are carried inside the aircraft in a special bomb bay in the belly. Even ordinary straight panel lines can reflect radar energy. So on the stealth fighter, the majority of the aircraft is covered with special radar-absorbent material. Where panel lines remain, such as here around the night sensor on the nose, the panels have a saw-tooth edge to better scatter the radar energy. Unlike most strike fighters which use radar to find their targets, the Black Jet uses a thermal imaging night sensor. A radar would give off an electronic signal that could be detected by an enemy force. The thermal sight picks up the temperature difference between the objects on the ground and provides the pilot with a ghostly video image of the Earth below him, even on the darkest, moonless nights. Ground attack missions have always been the most dangerous combat assignments. In an age of radar-guided anti-aircraft missiles, they've become even more so. The role of the F-117 Black Jet is designed specifically for this mission. Its specialty is the most challenging night attack. It is designed to sneak into enemy airspace without being detected and to attack pinpoint targets with laser-guided bombs and precision-guided missiles.
The F-117 is a one-mission unique aircraft. It is a night attack fighter to go against critical high-leverage targets with pinpoint accuracy.
The first combat missions of the F-117 were flown in 1989 during Operation Just Cause in Panama. The combination of stealth features and precision attack electronics gives the Black Jet a unique capability for deep strike missions under the cloak of darkness. The F-117 Black Jet is flown by an elite group of pilots of the 37th Tactical Fighter Wing. The pilots were handpicked not only because of the secrecy of the program, but because of the demanding nature of night attack flying. The wing commander describes the qualifications for Black Jet pilots.
The qualifications are very strict. We look for fighter pilots who have a minimum of 1,000 hours of fighter time. Consequently, you'll find that we have no lieutenants in the outfit flying the airplane, captains and above. They also have to come recommended by their wing leadership, their commanders or their directors of operations. And then we go through a screening process to make sure that the qualifications they're coming to with us meet the standard. All those qualifications all add up to one thing. Realizing, of course, the airplane is a single-seat, nighttime attack aircraft that flies basically autonomous. That requirement is a maturity type requirement to make sure that we have the best pilots capable, because as I said before, flying the airplane is very easy. But to be able to make all those decisions and to operate autonomously, we look for the experience factor.
The Air Force, everybody that flies the airplane is specially screened for it because of the mission and the capability of the airplane. It required a certain experience level in order to, in other words, they didn't want people coming right out of pilot training here to fly the airplane. Not necessarily due to rank, but based on experience. The requirements were to have 1,000 hours of fighter time in order to get into the program. And again, the pilots were hired based on that as much on the time as based on maturity level as far as flying and flying skills.
Until the F-117 was publicly unveiled in 1988, the Black Jet was kept under a strict veil of secrecy. The aircraft were flown only at night to prevent spy satellites from viewing their unique shape. This led to unusually strict training regimens for the pilots.
our pilot workload when they come up range on the first night of the week, Monday night, because we can't guarantee how their crew rest has been that day. We only fly one go on Monday nights, and the pilots are through early. But by Tuesday night, when we have virtual guarantee of the rest capability of the pilots, then we can fly longer into the night. Their rooms have blackout curtains in them. The dorms are locked up so that no one can come in until 1 o'clock in the afternoon so they can stay in and rest. And so every pilot has the total opportunity to get both the required 12 hours of crew rest and the opportunity for 8 hours of uninterrupted rest. Also, he's away from those things that might interrupt crew rest if he were living at home. The school bus coming by, the telephone ringing for the spouse to go to their meeting, and so on. So we prevent it by taking care of it before it happens, and we don't have a problem with it.
The very unusual shape of the F-117 would suggest it is very different to fly than conventional fighters. Indeed, it was widely rumored that the F-117 was nicknamed the Wobbly Goblin due to unusual flight characteristics. The pilots feel otherwise.
Let me say that I have talked to virtually every pilot who has ever flown the airplane, and I can find no pilot who has ever referred to the aircraft as a Wobbly Goblin. And the airplane flies very well. Joe, why don't you just talk about in general terms about flying characteristics?
Actually, the pilots that fly the airplane are kind of offended by that term, and we'd like to squash it at this point. I was also very surprised when I first saw the airplane. It's very different looking. I used to fly the F-4 and the F-111, and this aircraft handles very similar to most other fighters that we have in the inventory. It has a fly-by-wire flight control system that's almost exactly the same as the F-16, so it handles very nicely.
The airplane turns just like any other aerodynamic vehicle. When you have to turn, aerodynamics make you have to bank the aircraft to turn the airplane. It's not like a train that can go around the tracks like that. You have to turn it. And it flies just like any other airplane at all. There are no other specific characteristics. It is a very, very easy airplane to fly, as I said this morning. It has flying characteristics of any other fighter I've flown, and have no difficulty flying the airplane, and you don't have to adapt anything different to fly the airplane.
The way the aircraft flies, it flies, it flies great. You can't see much of the fuselage, as you can imagine, from up front in the cockpit. Feels like you're on the tip of a spear as you're out flying. All I can say is exhilarating. It's a good airplane to fly.
Low observability designed into the B-1B bomber made it far less visible to radar than older bombers. Could the technology be taken further? In the late 1970s, the United States Air Force set out to prove it could be done. The results are evident in this very exotic aircraft, the Northrop B-2 Advanced Technology Bomber. Although precise information is still classified, the B-2 is believed to have a radar cross-section an order of magnitude less than the already stealthy B-1B. Although similar in size to the older B-52 bomber, the B-2 is probably several hundred times less visible to radar. It is impossible to make an aircraft totally invisible to radar, but its radar cross-section can be reduced to such an extent that its radar reflection cannot be distinguished from normal background radiation. It has been suggested that the B-2 has a frontal radar cross-section similar to that of a large insect, such as a bumblebee. The additional stealth capabilities of the B-2 were sought because of the mission of strategic bombers. The main opponent of strategic bombers today is the radar-guided anti-aircraft missile. These missile sites are set up behind an interlocking barrier of radars. The map here shows how far each radar can see when searching for a conventional aircraft such as the B-52. The bomber cannot get through the radar line without being seen by at least one of the radars. The features added to the B-1B reduces the effectiveness of such a barrier by decreasing the range at which the bomber could be detected. This creates gaps through which the B-1B can pass undetected. Such a radar net is even less effective against the B-2 bomber, since there are even larger gaps in their coverage. What cannot be seen by radar cannot be targeted by radar-guided missiles. The B-2's stealth features are contained in its unique shape. The B-2 looks very different from the F-117 stealth fighter, since it uses more recent low observability technology. The B-2 is essentially a flying wing, patterned after earlier flying wings developed by Northrop in the late 1940s. The B-2 has no large tail surfaces to reflect radar energy. Its flight controls in the trailing edge of the wing are computer-controlled for stability. Its engines are hidden in the wings, with air intakes located on the top of the wing where radar cannot easily see. The surfaces of the bomber are covered with radar-absorbent material to further weaken the reflection of radar from its surfaces. Surprisingly, it is manned by only 2 crewmen, compared to 4 in the B-1B bomber.
Everything that we've done so far in flight test has been very close to what we predicted in our simulation. The cockpit is very friendly. It's similar to a FB-111 where you have side-by-side seating, so it cuts down a lot of intercom traffic that you have in other large airplanes. This airplane is very compact and it moves in unity. The pilot really feels that he's part of the airplane as he goes through his maneuver. So in that respect, it's more like a fighter. I remember one particular thing on Flight 3, I put the throttles to just below max continuous thrust. The airplane just accelerated away, and it really caught the chase airplanes by surprise. They just couldn't believe that this big an airplane could accelerate that fast. That Jets is an airplane that really wants to fly. It's going to have that really good payload capability and just an incredible range. And of course, those things are what you're looking for in an airplane.
The peculiar engine exhausts on the B-2 bomber and the F-117 fighter reveal another aspect of stealth technology. Since these designs so effectively counter radar detection, an enemy force might be tempted to use another means to determine their location. Sound detectors, tested in combat since World War I, have proven to be largely ineffective. The most likely candidate as a backup sensor is the infrared detector, which picks up heat differences between the aircraft and the natural background. As in the case of radar, infrared technology can also be used for missile guidance, with missile homing in on the hot exhaust gases of a jet engine. The F-117 Black Jet uses an infrared detector instead of radar. Soviet fighters, such as the MiG-29 and the Sukhoi 27, use infrared detectors to supplement their radar, and are armed with both radar-guided and infrared-guided missiles. The unusual engine outlets on the B-2 and the F-117 contain design features to defeat infrared sensors and infrared-guided missiles. How these systems work is still highly classified, but probably includes methods to reduce the heat signature of the engine. The unique features of the B-2 and the sophistication of its design have led to a stiff price tag. The B-2 Advanced Technology Bomber is currently estimated to cost over $500 million apiece, making it the most expensive warplane ever proposed for series production. The F-117 and the B-2 are not the last word in stealth aircraft. Other combat aircraft are under development, such as the YF-22 and the YF-23 Advanced Tactical Fighters. But the B-2 and the Black Jet will go down in the pages of aviation history as the pioneers of stealth technology.